Yep.
So he went upstairs.
Yucky dookie. I have too many things today. Too many things. Too much stuff. Yeah, perfect. I'll say this while we're online. I have a blanket because I ripped my pants coming in today, guys. So it's nothing horrible. It's just inner thigh, because, thigh rub. But literally on the way in up the ramp, I was like, why do I feel colder all of a sudden? And so I was like, okay, well, we'll have a blanket. So, but, the Lord, I think the Lord laughs with us in our humor. And I think just silly things like that can easily get under skin and, have a bad attitude about it or get worried and frustrated for the evening. And I am blessed that the Lord likes to just keep me humble and I can laugh and not get upset or get frustrated. But I have the pleasure of just bringing the word today. And we have some different stuff that we're going to talk about tonight, but I really kind of wanted to build on some things that Julian taught, not last week, because we didn't have last week, but the week before. And if you weren't with us or didn't watch online, Julian talked about life and death. So kind of this concept of not being afraid of death because we know it's not the end as Christians, and how that should change our view about different things and how God gives us a purpose for life even though death will come. And so I wanted to take a step in kind of our foundation passage that we'll read for this idea that we're going to be talking about is James chapter 4. But I guess if I had to give a title of this lesson night is Living Like There's No Tomorrow. And so if you want to turn with me to our passage for the evening, it's James 4. And we're going to start in... Yeah, I definitely do not have space. I'm going to drop something for sure. Starting in verse 13, and going to just... I know, that wind's crazy outside. Yeah, we're going to... So my passage calls this boasting about tomorrow, but I'll go ahead. And so chapter 4, verses 13 through 15. If someone would like to read it, feel free.
Four of what?
James.
Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.
Yeah. So taking this idea of, not being scared of death that Julian talked about, I want to also build on that, though, of this idea that we're not promised tomorrow. So as Christians, how are we meant to live with that in mind? And while I was thinking about this, I kind of had a lot of thoughts that came. This is also something the Lord's just been, working in my own heart, of just kind of how the world sees living like there's no tomorrow. And I have lots of phrases that come to mind that might be familiar for you guys. And if you have other ones I don't list, let me know. But the first one was carpe diem, which means seize the day. I know that because I was forced and very much enjoyed watching the Dead Poets Society. It is a movie. I had to watch it in one of my English classes. If you haven't seen it, it has Robin Williams, which I love Robin Williams, so his movies are always great. But also phrases like now or never, life is too short, live in the moment, or maybe some more popular ones that are newer of this acronym. Yep, you can say it louder.
YOLO.
Yep, YOLO, which you only live once. And now, a phrase that I haven't heard any of our youth students say it, but I've heard after school program kids say it because I've worked in some of those spaces, of do it for the plot, which essentially means do it because it'll add to your story of like you'll have a memory or something. A lot of the times they're using it as an excuse to do something crazy and something probably they shouldn't do. So if you ever hear a teenager say that, probably keep an eye on them. But these are phrases that I kind of had come to mind as I was thinking about this, like you're not promised tomorrow. And so while those are phrases that we see in our normal culture and just in the world around us, I want to take a specific look, though, as for us as Christians, what does it mean to live like there's no tomorrow or have this mindset of now or never or life is too short? And really kind of look at this balance of like how the world views there's no tomorrow and how the Bible says. And so tonight, I definitely don't have any fancy Hebrew or Greek words for you tonight, so I'm sorry. But tonight will be more of just a reflection of how are we living life in a way that Christ calls us to live with this thought in mind. So that's kind of our question that we're answering. A lot of things that also come to mind for me when it comes to these phrases are things like bucket lists. Has anyone ever made a bucket list in this room before? A bucket? Yeah? Okay. What were some things that were on your bucket list, Kelly?
When I was young. Marry a pastor.
There you go.
Life's done. She's met
It's
it.
all we needed to do in life.
Skydive.
Skydive, that's a good one. I like that. That's a popular one. I feel like traveling to different places are also on bucket lists, things like that. The newer thing that people are doing that I have not done myself is like people make bingo cards, so it feels more like a game. So they like try to like stamp it off as something, so it's a fill in, and then they try to see what makes a bingo first, which is fun. But I think this idea of like bucket lists or bingo cards are these items that like, oh, I need to get this done before I die. I need to get this done of this. I have seen a lot of it centered around of like what the world thinks they need to get out of life. And we're going to look kind of at our passage showing it's not so much for us as Christians what we get out of life, but what we give in our life. And so if you'll join with me, we're going to go ahead and go to our first kind of passage that's not our foundation passage, which is in Matthew. I don't have enough space today, which is Matthew 16. But before we get there, I guess, maybe like these things of bucket lists or even people that you've experienced in your life that are non-Christians, maybe even the ones that like fear death, how have you seen that affect how they live out their life? Of like trying to get things done, or what is their view around maybe not being promised tomorrow?
Sorry, was that a question? I missed it.
No,
Was
you're
that a
good.
question for
Yeah,
believers?
Yeah, so like how do non-believers view the fact that, because I think some people recognize the fact that like death is imminent, and so it affects their worldview and how they live.
I feel like it causes them to overemphasize the things of this world, to get everything in they possibly can before it's over. The whole, you only live once, let's try everything, gain everything, do everything. So I feel like that's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like a phrase that comes to mind with that is like, I gotta live my best life. Like everything that's gonna satisfy me, I gotta live my best life. But this passage that we're gonna read, I think points to a different way of how we're meant to live as Christians. So if someone wants to read it, it's gonna be Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26.
Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?"
Yeah. So I view this passage kind of as counterculture, especially to what Pastor was saying of those that, don't have the hope of Christ, that don't believe in Jesus, are worried about everything that they can get out of the world, all these experiences of like, how can I live life to the most, like the fullest? How can I live a meaningful life? How can I do all these things? But in reality, this passage shows us that to like try to win their soul and win their life almost is actually causing them to lose it. And so there's a couple key things of instead of doing that, Jesus calls us to do. And they're super easy because they say them for you. So if you think you have the answer, you most definitely do. But what are some things in this passage that Jesus is telling us to do instead of chasing those worldly things?
It sounds like helping people, doing something for someone else without expecting something in return.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think even like we can have that idea maybe for non-Christians too, of like, especially those that are like, I want to do something meaningful, I want to give back to the world. And you do have people that have good hearts and they're wanting to make a meaningful impact and do these good things. But I think it still comes back to a core thought of like, I want my life to be meaningful. And so I think like how you said in this, where Christ is calling us to like, it's not about if our life is meaningful, but if we can make someone else's life meaningful by how we're serving them. Yeah, that's good. I think there's, along with that, Jesus says, it's the big, like, hard part of this, too, but it's the denying ourselves part that I think is really big. That's the foundation of everything, really, that we'll talk about. But this denying of self and recognizing that it's not, I live my best life, but I must live the best life for Christ, which is hard. And I really like Luke. It's the same passage because, the different stories are written in different books of the Bible. But Luke chapter 9, specifically in verse 23, has the same story. But Luke has Jesus saying, daily take up your cross and deny yourself. And I think that really does, it's a daily choice of when we get up in the morning, or even like a moment by moment, of like, oh, there's someone over there that like probably needs my help, but like I got this thing to do or that thing to do, like I don't want to go help them. But it really is that like foundation of how we live is first and foremost denying ourselves so we can serve Christ, which is not how our world sees it, because it's very much chase after everything and anything that we can do. But for you, and like, once again, trying to be more reflective tonight, maybe of applying it to our lives, of how does like taking up your own cross and denying yourself kind of look in your own life by maybe serving others, serving your family, doing different things.
It means you kind of have to say, Lord, I'm going to do what you want me to do, even if it looks really shameful or silly to other people, right? I mean, take up your cross is talking about the fact that he had to, people who were under sentence of death had to carry their crosses out to the place where they were going to be put on them. And that's the point where people would spit on them and yell at them and get all excited to watch them die. And so I think that he's using that imagery on purpose, right, to say, that thing that If you know this person, you're hiding in your house. You don't want to be part of that crowd.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. Do that. And weirdly enough, you pick it up. Don't accept it when it gets put on you by your taskmaster. How weird would that be, to be at the front at the beginning of that and see the guy just walk up there and grab the cross instead of wait for like the guard to throw it on him?
Yeah. That's good.
Laying down your life for other people and putting their needs before your own. You know, we get so busy in our lives and only focus on what we have to get done, but if we literally pray and ask the Lord to give us the eyes to see and you know, serving others before ourselves.
Yeah, that's good. That's some of those key components you said in there too is something that we'll talk later on, but the slowing down and the busyness so we can actually see those moments, I think is really important. Yeah. But I think there's so much in this. It was hard to kind of choose a passage of what one to be the basis for this, but I think this is really our foundation of what does living like we're not promised tomorrow mean. And that's each day choosing that, since we have been blessed with tomorrow, we didn't get to choose that, but God has blessed us with it, that we live for him because he's the one that gave it to us. And that's just that foundation. I think with some of these, I'm going to keep coming back to our phrases that we talked about, but like YOLO or Carpe Diem, this is of course not for everyone, but I really see a lot in the world that those people that cling on to those mindsets and those phrases, it comes from a fear of life being boring and meaningless on its natural basis. Like, unless I do something, like I'm just going to be another cog in the machine, or like it's going to be this routine pattern of wake up, work, eat, sleep. Wake up, work, eat, sleep. Wake up, work, eat, sleep. And so it's this, for some people, this cultural mindset of life baseline is boring and meaningless. But what we'll see in these passages that I want to bring up is that's not true. Because we have God in our lives, he shows us the truth in which life is vibrant and meaningful. And so first, I want to look at Colossians. We're actually going to read a section and then a section, but it's from the same chapter. So it's Colossians 3. So if I could get two people, if one person would want to read Colossians 3:17, and then if one person would want to read Colossians 3:23 and 24.
Whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him.
Okay. And then 23 and 24.
Whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is for the Lord Christ whom you serve.
So these verses are kind of saying the same thing. I wanted to read both of them just because the context and when they're being said is a little different. So for 17, it's talking about, the previous verses is talking about the body and how when we're serving with each other, doing hymns, songs, doing worship. And so it's talking about whatever you do within the body, serving each other, word or deed, do it all in the Lord's name. But then 23 and 24 talking about the work. So it's addressing slaves, but I think we can pull this to our modern viewpoint of just the work that we do, whether that be work at home, if we stay at home, whether that's our actual job, well, staying home is a job. That's my stance. So, but if you go and work at a traditional workplace, let it be onto the Lord. And so a lot of times I've seen this used as also worship onto the Lord. And so I think this brings kind of a shift in that mindset of we are to deny ourselves to serve the Lord. And when we serve the Lord in everything that we do, it makes it meaningful. And that's a hard mindset to have, or even shift, because I think there's some things that are really easy to be like, oh, this is meaningful, this is work unto the Lord. Like when we serve on a Sunday morning, or we come in and do the food pantry and things like that. But then even like mundane things that are just a part of our everyday of like, I'm washing the dishes, but like, this is service unto the Lord because like I'm doing this for my family, or I'm gonna go get groceries and it's like, that's service unto the Lord because I'm feeding my family. And I think by finding meaning in each of those quote unquote mundane moments, it helps change our mindset about how important the life and the day that we have been given today is, even though the fact that we're not promised tomorrow. And so one of kind of our reflections as we're thinking about this is maybe what are some things in your life that, trying to join me in this thought experiment, that seem so mundane that you could see how you could change your vision about them to view them as being even worship unto the Lord.
Keeping house.
Yeah.
Or doing laundry. And sometimes when I do laundry, I say, well, thank the Lord, I can still do the laundry.
Yeah.
Or it could be the alternative, they would not be here, and I couldn't do the laundry.
Mhm.
So, just a gratefulness.
Yeah.
Tried it. I'm
Yeah.
not perfect at it, but
Yeah.
I try.
Yeah, no, verse 17 mentions that where it says giving thanks to the Lord, to God the Father through him. And so I think that's definitely something, or like just folding, like, I'm glad we have clothes to wear, or like thick clothes to wear because winter's coming up, that mindset. And I think having those thoughts help give us an attitude of gratitude in different areas of our life too. Yeah. Anyone else? A different, maybe mundane piece?
So last night, Clint had a board meeting, and so he's like, hey, can you run up here after work? And I have something for you to do. And then you can, obviously go home. And so I'm like, okay. So I came here straight after work, did the things for him. And then Anderson's like, hey, I'm hungry. And I'm like, oh, feeding my kid. Like, that's very mundane, and it happens a lot, and he eats a lot. And he'll feed him after school, and then he wants me to feed him after work. Like, you already ate once after school. Like, kid eats all the time. So, but anyway, so I was like, oh, so I could totally run to Target myself, grab the stuff, take it home, and feed the kid. But he was like, hey, you want to come pick me up? And then we'll go to Target together, and I want fruit pizza. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, okay, Lord, I can either like just do the thing and kind of be upset about it because I haven't even gone home yet, or I could go pick him up, let him drive the mile to Target, go shopping with my kid and buy the stuff, and then go home. And then we ended up in the kitchen together, working on stuff together. And I made him the fruit pizza, and he wasn't even hungry by the time the fruit pizza was made because he ate the box of donuts that we bought too. But anyways, but I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, thank you, Lord, that I had that moment with Anderson, and thank you that he's going to remember that, not that Mom was at work all day, didn't sit down until 9 o'clock at night. He's not going to think about all those things, but he's going to think about that time that Mom made him the fruit pizza when he just asked for it on a random day, instead of it being a special day. So I was just like, okay, thank you, God, for that time, that memory. And we could get caught up in it. Now, I did tell Clint at 9 o'clock, I'm like, I gotta go to bed. I haven't even sat down yet. But I still had that time with Anderson and that memories, which, you know, only 2 years left of school. So
Yeah.
they won't last forever. But serving my kid, feeding him, a lot.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, Sam will tell you this, but I love spreadsheets so much. That's what I do for my job. But there are sometimes I go into work and I'm just like, I stare at numbers all day. What's 4 plus 4 again? And so there are some days where I even like, it's something that I love so much, but since I routinely do it so much, I can lose the meaning and the love for it. And so I do have to take moments and sit with the Lord. And I like work at a Christian nonprofit, so I'm doing numbers for people that like go and like make sure people that are working at our employment center can have like salaries, or like kids in middle school can go on fun field trips. Like I could be like working at like some sales place that's like, oh yeah, I sold a tennis racket. But like I think that even can have meaning of like we in our work are serving other people, of like we get to have this with a cheerful heart, and then that serves other people because we get to help them and give easement to their minds. But I think that's like, even like, I remember when I was like, this was something that I heard a sermon about a long time ago, of like garbage people having to go pick up stinky people's garbage. Like, how could that be meaningful? And it's like, but it's still serving other people and taking care of those things. And there can be thanks and there can be meaning in it, which can be hard to do, especially when like the world can seem so dark and so hard at times. But with that also being dark and hard at times, I want to take a look at Psalm 8, which I am going to expound upon this in a little bit of my own feelings. But Psalm 8, this, if someone would read verses 3 and 4.
The moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you should care for him?
Yeah, so I think another aspect of this, like, so we have life is meaningful, but also life is vibrant, of coming out of our own minds and, like this psalmist, recognizing God's hand in things. I think that can be a super easy thing to help bring us back to just this mindset of like how blessed we are that we have today. And I'm going to kind of call out myself a little bit. I have a very vivid memory of like being in middle school, and I was hanging out with my best friend that I grew up with like my entire life, and we're at church and we're like about ready for service, and she's like staring at this plant, and she's like, wow, look at how beautiful this plant is. Isn't it so wonderful that the Lord just knitted this leaf to look this certain way, and how this flower smells so beautiful? And I was just like, me being a middle schooler, thinking that I'm cool now because I'm an adult, because I'm no longer in elementary school. I was like, why are you being so like weird and being so naive and like caring about a plant that's dumb? Don't you know there's more important things in life? What are you talking about? And I remember, and so rightfully so, I thank my youth leader for this so much. She like looked at me and she was like, do not spoil a childlike wonder in seeing like God's glory in everything around you and having reverence for him because of everything, even down to the little detail. And of course, me as a middle schooler was like, how could you say something so mean to me? But now I'm like, oh no, she was so right. Like, there's so much beauty in this world that can seem so everyday because we're surrounded by it always. But like, just to bring us back, as like letting the simplest of things be a reminder of how good the Lord is. Like on a hot summer day when the breeze comes at the right moment and being like, oh, I feel so refreshed. Like that's so simple and that's so natural and like that's weather, but it's like, Lord, you have created all of this, and be refreshed in that. And so I think that's where we fight against this idea of, on a baseline, life is boring and meaningless, but life is vibrant and meaningful because we have the Lord and we have this Creator that created everything. And so something for me that I really like is, Sam will tell you, I did not get up early in the morning, so I don't get to enjoy it very often. But seeing sunrises, I love so much. Sunsets, they're also really good. I love when they look like cotton candy, because I love cotton candy. But there's something about a sunrise of like getting to just recognize that a new day is starting, and I get to be a part of it. And so it's moments like that where it's like something that can seem so meaningless and every day can bring reflection and meaning to life. And so that's kind of what I want to pose to you guys. Maybe there's something in your life that you're like, this small thing but feels so meaningful. Is there anything maybe in your life that you're like, oh yes, when I smell roses, this reminds me of this? Or maybe when you see this, do you guys have anything in your life like that right now?
I'll take it back to cooking. Laura and I, our granddaughter comes over a couple times a month, but it's like when I make something, first time I made her spicy cucumbers. The look on her face, the brightness, the way her eyes are like, doing good. You know, it's moments like that. It's just like, okay, Pop, I knocked the other one down. So
That's good.
Yeah, I like it.
I was thinking about when he was in El Salvador, he sent me a couple pictures, and I'm like, oh my gosh, of volcano. I don't know if you're going to share those or not, but holy moly, just the beauty of those pictures and the sky and the mountain and the just so beautiful. And I literally was like, Lord, I'm so little. Like the world is so huge and we are so little, and I think we get caught up in our little worlds and not seeing the bigger picture and what the beauty and wonder that he has. But even tonight, I ran home, and when I stood outside, I could see the sun setting, and the clouds looked kind of like reddish purple coming over, and they were moving quite fast. And I like stood outside for a second, and I'm like, oh my goodness, those clouds are so beautiful. And I'm just watching them just rush over. But most of the time, I would just keep your head down and gotta get to church. Let's go. Like,
Yeah.
but just God's creation is so beautiful.
Anything else that you guys might delight in that reminds you of the Lord? I feel like I gotta try these spicy cucumbers now if they're so good. Like, no. But yeah, no, that's good. Kelly, you keep touching on it, so I feel like we just have to go there now. No, you're good. But so we have this, kind of, I guess not we, but I've seen this worldly fear of like life is naturally boring and meaningless. And so I think the way that the world tries to fight against that is with the hustle and bustle that we always see, of constantly chasing something or constantly trying to consume something. And so like chasing after the next big thing, a position, or even maybe an experience, trying to get those bucket list items off, or maybe even an item on there, like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff so I was about to say a car and I realized I don't know fancy cars. What would be a fancy car someone would chase after?
Ferrari.
Ferrari. Okay, thank you. I was like, oh yes, a car that someone would want. I know nothing about cars. Yeah. Or even like, I think like getting so, like that causes us to be so caught up in our minds and our thoughts, like Kelly was talking about, of like normally we're keeping our heads down and doing all these things. Or even now today in the day of technology, of it's just so easy when we have moments of silence where we feel even a slight bit of boredom. We can start scrolling on social media, reading different things, binge watching TV. The term that they're calling it now for social media, which you guys might have already heard, is like doom scrolling, of like getting in this constant pattern of like constant gratification of just this, and it fills every moment. So we don't have to have this fear of like, what does this emptiness mean? And I have this quote that from this book. I felt like Julian brings quotes, so I felt the need to bring a quote this time, even though he's not here. But this book is from, Sam's not down here, so I have to make sure. I always say his last name wrong, even though it's 5 letters. I always put an R in there where it doesn't need to go. But this is John Mark Comer. I always want to say Cromer. But this is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And he has a quote in here, not from any special person, but just his own therapist that I really liked. So I wanted to share. Don't know if I really liked is the correct phrasing, but maybe more like felt deeply convicted by. But it says, people are just too busy to live emotionally healthy and spiritually rich and vibrant lives. And I think that's like a lie that we can easily get lost in from this world of the constant chase and consume, that we miss these moments to pause and see the Lord's beauty. Or even as we were talking about, you know, the work of the Holy Spirit on Sunday, of like pausing and sensing when the Spirit's moving, even in these mundane moments. I really got kind of this imagery too as I was writing this, of like the mundane moments of like going to the grocery store and being like, I need to get this, I need to get that, need to go home, and maybe missing the single mom that's trying to handle her 3 kids by herself. That like, you might maybe not go up to her in that moment and pray for her, but you could pray for her just by yourself. Or missing the people that need our help, that maybe the Lord's pulling, just even to help them carry things out to their car, of that the constant go, go, go is filling our lives and our heads with so much that the Lord has to speak to us in a roar so we can even hear him instead of a whisper, like a friend. But the kind of passages that I wanted to look at this to go with it is, we're going to go a couple pages further, but it's staying in Psalm 139. Don't know why I act like I flipped there. I have little markers for me instead of trying to find it. So if someone, it's this one and then one more. So if you don't read this one or the next one, you'll miss your chance to read. So, but it's Psalm 139, verses 7 through 12.
Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. Is that it?
So I like to, when I was looking for these passages, I think this is a nice reminder that as we're talking about, you know, making this mind shift from like life is not mundane, but it's vibrant and meaningful, that like the Lord's glory is in everything, but his spirit is also constantly surrounding us and in every moment. And it's not just a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night, but it's just like a reach out to our friend's hand, or like an aside to him as we're noticing things. Of just having this mindset of like, where could we go that the Spirit is already not with us? Which is, it's just really like meaningful, especially as like loneliness is something to really struggle with. Of like, we are never alone, even though we can feel that way. And so my question kind of for you guys is around this is, what are some ways of trying to fight against this chase and consume and slowing down, like Kelly said, of like, what are some moments maybe you even see in your own life as opportunities to slow down and recognize the Spirit even in the moment, even if he's not saying anything to you, but just to rest in it and slow down and have that peace?
Sometimes we just need to stop, take a step back to say, do I really need this? Is this really worth the time and energy?
I feel like we fill our schedules so much with things to do that I feel like sometimes, like Clint and I, every Thursday night is date night, and it's on the calendar because that's what we do. But if we're having a hard time finding time to slow down, schedule the time to slow down. Like literally put it in your calendar and block it off and protect it, because I don't feel like we do that enough.
Yeah, I think like how date night is a value for you guys. I think being intentional about wanting to slow down has to be a value for us to want to actually make time for it. And so, because I even like small things like my work life, I have a midweek lunch with 2 of my coworkers where we have lunch together on Wednesday, and it's just a nice time to slow down and like amidst like the crazy meetings or all the different deadlines that we have, to just slow down and have fellowship and community with each other, and even talk about what the Lord is doing in our lives. Of like those moments to like, instead of just doing, actually recognize who we're doing the things for. So
I think there's a unique element to learning to prioritize what's needed and what can wait, so that we can make room for reflection and space, margin in our life. And I think one of the things we don't recognize easily is how margin affects things like interruptions. Jesus was interrupted even in the flow of his life, but he left margin. He would get away and he would pray, and he had time when he would get away with the disciples and they would rest and eat. But though there are oftentimes godly interruptions in our schedule that produce kingdom moments. Now, the reason I prefaced all that by prioritizing and leaving the margin is because if we learn to exist with the margin, the interruptions don't feel overwhelming. If we always live running at 100 miles an hour, leave no margin in our life, an interruption can be the tipping point, or something we miss a kingdom moment because we've jammed everything else up. So if we could learn acknowledging that God orders our steps, that he is the one drawing us to himself, that there is more than just this life, we could probably slow down and purposely build that margin back in, and in so doing, make ourselves available for holy interruptions. Or less resistant, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, the holy interruptions actually, I'll read it for us. Don't be worried, guys. But my last passage I have is, I'll just read it for us, but it's Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 18. But it says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil." And so I think that goes along with like these holy opportunities, that in these moments, like the Lord, the Holy Spirit, He is trying to speak to us. Even it might be small things, of noticing those things around us, of maybe saying a prayer for someone, because like we don't battle against flesh and blood, but like our prayer for peace for someone does have an effect in the heavenly and spiritual realm of like bringing ease to them, and like they might not even know to cry out to the Lord, but we're crying out to the Lord on their behalf. And so taking those opportunities, and this is something that it goes on to also talk about, not to be foolish, but to understand what the Lord's will is. But then to also do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery, but instead be filled with the Spirit. And I just thought of the phrase that's also here in the Bible that talks about having the soberness of mind and attentiveness. And and just even myself was very convicted about this thought of like, it's not the struggling of drunkenness that I face, but it's the struggling of not being sober of mind because I'm always in my thoughts about the next thing. Or I'm not attentive because I always have my nose down in my phone. That like I am not being understanding of the Lord's will, or I'm not making the most of every opportunity because that's my version of not being sober of mind or being attentive. And that's hard, especially like if we are not intentional about keeping this mindset of life is vibrant and meaningful, and like we have to slow down and not just fill it with these things of the world. And so my kind of like little like take home and remember phrase almost for this was, the world tells you to chase and consume, but the Spirit tells you to pause and participate. Just because I think this imagery of consuming the world, like we take. But participating with the Holy Spirit, He asks us to participate with Him and give back. Instead of this constant thought of self, but giving to others and denying ourselves and giving to the world. Which is a very upside down thought from how the world thinks. And so it's kind of my thoughts for tonight of just living like there's no tomorrow, but not how the world views it, but how Christ tells us to view it. But before we close, if anyone has any final thoughts or just things that they think go along. Okay, I'll pray us out and then we'll be good to go. Lord, I thank you that we live a life that while we know that we're not promised tomorrow, we can be excited about what today has. And I just ask that as we talked about these things tonight and we read what your word has to say, that it changes our mindsets and it changes our viewpoints on how we view life, that you will help us see the beauty in the simple, or see the meaningful in the mundane. But you also help us to just lay our selfish desires down and pursue you first and what you have for us. That we be intentional about being slow and listening to what your Spirit has. And I just thank you. I thank you that you want us to be a part of your kingdom work, that you want us to be a part of what you're doing, and that you trust us with that and different things, Lord. And while we're very much not deserving of it, we thank you. And I just pray that as we go throughout the rest of this week and into next week, Lord, that you just be over us and our ears be a little bit more or a lot of bit more open to your spirit, and our minds open to your thoughts that you impart on us, and our hearts be pulled by those things that your heart is pulled for. And I just pray all of these things in your name. Amen.